In this video, we're going to find the equation of a line using 2 points on that line. So in our previous video, we found the equation of a line given the slope of that line and a point on that line. So in this video, we're going to be given 2 points on a line and asked to find the equation of that line. Now, the line that we're going to find is still going to be in slope-intercept form. We're going to find the y equals mx plus b version of that line. And so in order to find the equation of a line, I want to find the slope and the y-intercept. Now, in our previous video, we were just given the slope. In this video, we need to find the slope using some information, specifically the 2 points on the line. Now, hopefully, we've all seen and graphed equations of lines, and therefore we know that the slope of a line can be given in fraction form as the change in y divided by the change in x. Meaning, when I go from one point to the next, I change my y value by the amount in the numerator, and I change my x value by the amount in the denominator. Now, that means if I have 2 points, I can find the slope of a line by taking the y value of my second point and subtracting the y value of my first point, because that is the change in y. These little numbers here, if you haven't seen these before, are subscripts, and it just means the x value of the first point, the y value of the first point, the x value of the second point, and the y value of the second point. So change in y is simply the difference between the y values, y2 minus y1. And similarly, the change in x is the difference in the x values, x2 minus x1. So that gives me a formula for finding the slope if I know 2 points on the line. So if I know 2 points on the line, I can find the slope, which is labeled m, by taking a fraction, y2 minus y1, divided by x2 minus x1. That's known as the slope formula, or the slope formula with 2 points. Now that we know that information, we can find the equation of a line which goes through 2 points. Let's do an example. Let's find the equation of a line that goes through the points 8, 1, and 2, 10. I know I want my equation of a line to be in slope-intercept form. Again, that's the form I'm choosing. And so I need to find the m and find the b. I'm going to find the m first using that slope formula. Now I'm going to call 2, 10 the second point and 8, 1 the first point. So if I look at the y value of the second point, that's 10. And the y value of the first point is 1. The x value of the second point is 2, minus the x value of the first point is 8. So I have 10 minus 1, that's the difference in the y values. That, by the way, is a 9, divided by 2 minus 8, which is negative 6. Now, 9 over -6 is a fraction that we can write in a lot of different ways. You can leave it as 9 over -6. You can change it into a decimal of -1.5. But since we're dealing with slopes, I'm going to use the reduced version of the fraction, which is -3 over 2. If you're looking for how to write your answer, just if there's something specific that the question asks for, write your answer in that version. So if it says write your answer as a decimal, change that to a decimal. If it says write your answer as an improper fraction, write your answer as an improper fraction. So anyways, now I know that my m is -3/2. So I know that my equation is going to be y equals -3/2 x plus some unknown b value. And if you watched the previous video, you saw how we found the b value. Essentially, now I know that my equation looks like this. I also know that 210 and 81 go through, or excuse me, my line hits 81 and 210. That means if I plug in 210, I get a true statement, or if I plug in 81, I get a true statement. So I just need to plug in one of them. It doesn't matter which one. If I plug in, let's say 210 into my equation, what I will end up getting, again, making sure that I plug in the 2 into the x value and the 10 into the y value. I get 10 is equal to -3/2 times 2 plus b. So 10 is equal to -3 plus b when I multiply. And when I add 3 to both sides, I end up with 13 is equal to b. Now, you could have also plugged in 8, 1 as well. If I plugged in 8, 1, the solving would have been a little bit different. I would have had 1 is equal to -3/2 times 8 plus b. And if you take -3/2 times 8, that's -12. So adding 12 to both sides would have also given you 13. So this shows in this example that it doesn't matter which of the 2 points you plug in to your equation, it'll give you the same b value. So now that I have my m and I have my b, I am almost done. Remember, it asks for the equation of the line. So that means I just write my equation. Y equals -3/2 times x plus 13. And that would be my final answer. Y equals -3/2 x plus 13. Let's do another example. And if you want to try this on your own, you could pause the video right now. I'm going to go right into the example though. Find the equation of a line or of the line which goes through -2, 7 and -1, -2. I'm looking for the slope-intercept version of the line, y equals mx plus b. And I use the slope formula to find the slope. change in y. So I take the y value of my second point, that's -2, and I subtract the y value of my first point, that's 7. So -2 minus 7. That goes in the numerator. In the denominator, the y value of my, the y value of my second point was -2. The x value of my second point is -1. And then I subtract the x value of my first point. Now be very careful when you do this, because when we do this, we are subtracting a negative. That's one of the things you have to be really careful on when you use the slope formula. -2 minus 7 is -9. -1 minus a -2. So that's like a -1 plus 2 is a +1. Now the simplest version of that m is -9. So I'm going to use -9 for my slope. Y equals -9x plus b. Now that I know what my equation looks like, except for the b value, I find the b value by plugging in one of the 2 points. Doesn't matter which one. I'll use the second point. So I will plug in the point -1, -2 into that equation. Again, be careful that you plug in the -2 into the y spot and the -1 into the x spot. When we do that, we get -2 is equal to -9 times -1 plus b. So I get -2 is equal to 9 plus b. And I can subtract 9 from both sides and get a -11 as my b. Once I know that the equation has to be y equals -9x minus 11. If you ever want to check your answer, you can always check your answer by plugging in both points for that we know are on the line, and they should give you true statements. So if I plugged in -2 for x, -9 times -2 would give me a +18, minus 11 gives me 7, which is exactly what this is saying. When you plug in -2, you should get it out. Or excuse me, when you plug in -2, 7, should give you a true statement. Same thing with -1, -2. We could have plugged in -1 and -2 here and gotten a true statement as well. So you can always plug in and check your answer, plug in the points in order to check your answer. All right. Try this one on your own, and then I'll show you how to do this. I'll push pause on the video, and I will come back to it in just a few seconds. All right, let me do this problem. Finding the equation of a line which goes through the points 1, -3, and -2, -5. So we want y equals mx plus b. We want that slope-intercept form. So we use the slope formula, which is the y2 minus y1 the y value of my second point, -5, minus the y value of my first point, -3, all divided by -2 minus 1, because that is the x value of my second point minus the x value of my first point. I put parentheses around things when I have a negative. You can do that with every single number if you'd like, but that just allows me to see you're subtracting a negative. So -5 minus a -3, that's like -5 plus 3, which gives me a -2. And -2 minus 1, that gives me a -3. Those negatives can cancel out, and we get a slope of 2/3. Now, 2/3 is the reduced version of the fraction, so I can't get a fraction that's any simpler. So I'll use 2/3 as my slope. There's nothing, I can't simplify that. So I know my equation is going to look like y equals 2/3 x plus b. In order to find the b, I plug in one of the points. I'll plug in -2, -5 into the equation. And then we'll solve and find for b. So -5 is equal to 2/3 times -2 plus b. So far, we've dealt with a lot of whole numbers. In this case, obviously, we're not getting a whole number on that right-hand side. I get -4/3 as an improper fraction. Now, I'm going to take -5 and add 4/3 to it. And depending on how we like to write our b, I'll write it in a few different ways. If I add 4/3 to both sides, I get -3 and 2/3 as a mixed number. And if I want to change that to an improper fraction, it's -11/3. And this is one of those ones where whichever way the system or your professor wants the answer, or your instructor or your teacher want the answer, just use that version of the answer. If they want the mixed number version, it's -3 2/3. If they want the improper fraction version, it's -11/3. I think I'll write my answer now as the improper fraction version. So I'm going to write it as y equals 2/3 x minus 11/3. Again, that's not the only way to write it though. So there you go. That's the answer. And again, if your teacher, your instructor, your professor, whatever system you're on, wants decimals or they want the mixed numbers, then you can use that as well. So that's the last example in this video. Remember, this video covered finding the equation of a line given 2 points. Our previous video found the equation of a line given the slope and any point on that line. And in our next video, we're going to find the equation of a line given a parallel line and a point on the line, or given a perpendicular line and a point on that line.